V'yadaber Hashem Moshe. Hashem says to Moshe, Bahar Sinai Lemor, on Mount Sinai. So what? It's different than usual, right? Usually it's, V'yadaber Hashem Moshe Lemor. Here they adds Bahar Sinai, right? So everybody wonders, why does he have to tell you that Hashem says this to Moshe on Mount Sinai? The Torah was given on Mount Sinai, so you know that any part of the Torah is from Mount Sinai. So why do you have to say it here? Or why don't you say it everywhere? What's special? So it's got to be something to do with what it's talking about. And it talks about the rules of Shemitah and Yovel. So what is that? So Shemitah in English is the sabbatical year. Yovel in English is the Jubilee year. And what that means is that the sabbatical year is that for a farmer in the land of Israel, a Jewish farmer, every seventh year of his planting in his field, and it's set. I mean, it's not, every person is not different. It's a set date. That year, you're not allowed to plant, to work the field, or to take ownership of the crops that grow. But let's say you have crops that grow by themselves. Apples, for instance. Apples are going to grow every year. You don't have to plant apple trees every year. So what happens in such a case? So there you can't even own the apples that grow, even though you own the field. Now that 1 year, it says you let it go. That's the rule. And then again in the 50th year, it says the same thing. You have to let everything go on its own. You don't plant, you don't bring it in, you don't work the field. Now, you don't just let it go to waste, by the way. It's considered free, and the basin is allowed to gather it for poor people. They're allowed to have it, anything that grows on its own, but you're not allowed to do it yourself. So it says, so what is that? As Rashi begins, he says, Ma inyan Shemitah Eitzel Har Sinai. He says, what does the laws of the sabbatical year have to do that you say that it came on Mount Sinai? You can say anything came on Mount Sinai. Everything came from Mount Sinai. So why do you tell us they're right here and then the laws of Shemitah? Because as I said, one would think that the law, that whatever it is we're going to talk about, there's some reason that Hashem wants us to know that He said that on Mount Sinai, right? And He talks about the sabbatical year. So the answer is that we, when we conclude, right, all of the when we think about the laws of the Torah, it's, for us, when it comes to a certain spiritual or esoteric or metaphysical concept in the Torah, we think, well, that of course comes from God, right? Something that's very important must come from God. The laws of kosher, for instance. Laws of kosher are not necessarily logical. They're not necessarily good for you. But these are the laws that God said will nourish your neshama, nourish your soul. So you have to eat this. Right? So you say, well, that had to come from Mount Sinai. I mean, that's logical. That's not going to come from somebody's head. But how about when I tell you that, you can't steal? You say, well, you don't need Mount Sinai for that. Everyone knows you shouldn't steal. Right? You should, right? But the fact is, the Torah tells you here the laws of Shemitah, which are very mundane. It's the laws that have to do with for farmers. It's very straightforward. It's very mundane. It's very everyday. It's not it doesn't sound like anything holy, like praying or kosher or Shabbos. It's so I do work the field. I don't work the field. It's for farmers. So you'd say of all of the things that say that it has to be Har Sinai, you'd think why would it be this? Is because you might think that logical laws or laws that have to do with mundane things, those don't have to come from God. And the Torah is telling you that they do, that every law has to come from God. So when we say, for instance, you should not murder, or you should not steal, people say, that's logical. You know why I don't steal? I don't steal because I don't want someone to steal from me. Right? You know why I don't murder? Because I don't want someone to murder me. I don't kidnap because I don't want someone to kidnap a member of my family. Right? So what happens, you get, when you read the works of Dostoevsky, so he has a theme in some of his books where he talks about the idea of what crime really is. So he gives you the idea that, for instance, let's say that we believe the reason that I don't steal is I don't want someone to steal from me. So what if I have nothing? I have nothing. You can't steal anything from me. I have nothing. So am I allowed to steal then? Because I don't want you to steal from me, but I have nothing to steal. So you should be able to. Or I'm not allowed to physically attack somebody's sister because I don't want them to attack my sister. What if I don't have a sister? So then I can attack their sister? So of course you can't. But how do you know? How about when it comes to murder? You're not allowed to murder. So is abortion murder? Is euthanasia murder? We don't know. How about somebody going into the hospital and doctor says, well, this disease you have is going to kill you. You probably have 6 months to live. We can do this operation. There's a 10% chance you'll live, but if you do, you'll live for 5 years. So 10% chance to live. It means 90% chance you're going to die on the table right now. And if you do nothing, you're going to live for 6 months. So what do? If you do it, maybe that's murder. You don't do it, maybe it's not. Heart transplants, are that murder? Is it not? So how do we know the answer to these questions? Because it's in the Torah. That's why. Something that seems mundane, that everybody would know, you don't need the Torah to tell you this. The fact is that you do need the Torah to tell you this. I once wrote an article on an article that I read, and this article talked about Eichmann. And Eichmann, for people who knew Eichmann, let's say before the war, they knew Eichmann was a very intelligent, well-educated, and sophisticated person. And he understood not only medicine, but he understood culture and music and art. And it says that when he was in Auschwitz and he was working in there, and he came across a Jewish woman who was a well-known concert pianist, an amazing pianist. So he decided, instead of killing her, he's going to get a piano. He's going to put it in his house, and he's going to make her play, piano for him. She's a concert pianist. She can play all types of symphonic music or piano works and things like that at a very high level. And it's a private thing for him. He can do that. So he decided he would, and he did. But then he had this dog that he trained, and the dog was trained to understand the music, so that it would hear the music. And if it would hear a mistake in the music, the dog was trained to bite the person playing. Right? So you have this woman who's a Jew in a concentration camp, who's every day has to go down and play music for Eichmann. And anytime she makes a mistake, because you can imagine she's not herself. I mean, she's living in bunks. She has no food. She's starving to death. There's murder all around her. And she has to come and play music for him. She's going to make mistakes. Every time she makes a mistake, the dog bites her. So you say, this is crazy. Here you have a man who is so sophisticated, he wants to hear beautiful music all the time. You say, oh, that's wonderful. But if she doesn't play the music perfectly, he's going to have a dog bite her. Now, you know what it is? That's cruel, right? A person can only do such a thing if they don't have a Torah, because the Torah would tell you that that's cruel. You can't do it. But a person who thinks that life is culture, it's gourmet food, it's beautiful music, it's beautiful art, right? All of this aesthetic lifestyle is a wonderful thing. A person like that can also decide that they can kill people, right? Because we don't have a Torah that defines what death is and what's right and what's wrong. They can just change the rules, like Eichmann did. He changed the rules. So in Auschwitz, you were allowed to save the life of a piano player, a pianist, because you wanted to have piano music so you can save her life. But you could torture her if she makes a mistake. Right? That's crazy. But that's why you need the rules of everything, no matter how spiritual it is or how mundane it is, has to come from Har Sinai, from God. If it comes from God, then we know the truth. If it doesn't come from God, you have perverts and corrupt people like this who will say that you're allowed to do such a thing in the name of music. So that's an example. So that's why it begins here and says that these laws were given on Mount Sinai, and they're very mundane laws. Like, what do you have to tell me that for? Tell me prayer was on Mount Sinai. Tell me kosher is on Mount Sinai. Something that you'd only know. But here, these types of things of farming, it's sort of mundane. But no, this all comes from Mount Sinai.
But Rabbi, these rules of Shemitah and Jubilee only pertain to Israel.
Correct.
So a person like Tivya the Milchiker, he was entitled to carry on milking and...
Well, milking you can do anyways. That's not farming. But if he was a farmer in Poland, he would be allowed to. It's only in Israel. And it's only for Jews in Israel. So then you have this thing called the Jubilee year, Yovel, which is the 50th year. And it's the same rules apply, except there's more. There's other things that happen. You have the slaves become free, land that, like, let's say each tribe has land in Israel. And let's say you're from the tribe of Yehuda and I'm from the tribe of Dan. and I have money and you have land, and I want to buy some land from you. You can sell it to me. But on the Jubilee year, the land returns back to the original owner. So I'm only leasing it. Because in Israel, the land belongs to the tribe. So you can sell it to someone, but you're not really selling it. Right? That happens on that date also. But here's an amazing thing that happens. These laws are an example of the veracity of the Torah being true. Because imagine this. The Jews, right? The Jews that come out of Egypt, and they get this Torah. Now, if let us presume that the Torah is not true, then that it'd be like many people say, that the Jews got together, decided they wanted to teach tradition to their children. They wanted their children to follow certain rules. The only way they can convince them is to say it comes from God. But it didn't come from God. Let's just presume for our discussion. So they made it all up. So what do they come up with? Here they come up with this law that all of the Jewish people are going to be farmers, which they were, right, they were going to be. And as soon as they got to Israel, they were going to be farmers. And after you're there for 6 years, the 7th year, they said you can't use your land. So if you don't have enough money, you're going to starve. But then you have the 50th year, which comes after the 7th year, because it's 7 times 7 is 49. So year 49 and then year 50, you can't use your fields. 2 years in a row, you can't use your fields. So if that's the case, right, yeah, you're going to starve to death. So could you imagine that somebody goes and they tell their kids, the Torah says, and it comes from God, that you can't use your field in the 7th year and you can't use it in the 50th year. That means year 49 and 50 you can't use it. They tell them, so when you go to Israel and you start your farm, those 2 years you can't do it. Now, the person saying it knows it's not true. He knows God didn't give us a Torah, that we made it up. So you don't think somebody would have said to their kids, listen, where everybody is telling their kids that God gave us this book, but I want you to know you can do whatever you want. Because, I love you, and I don't want you to be hungry, and you're going to have 2 years where you can't use your field. So just tell people that God said so, but when they're not looking, you can use your field. Somebody would have said that to their kids, right? They would have told their kids if it was made up. The fact is that one of the proofs that the Torah is true is these laws, because these laws are so illogical that the year 49 and year 50 you can't use your field, and you're a farmer, and you're expected to do it. So if it wasn't God who told that to me, I would not do it. Right? So that's one of the proofs that they use, a piece of a proof that they use to show that the Torah is actually true. Because the only way people would have done it is if it actually came from God. And that's a part of it.
If you're living on a modern Jewish kibbutz, and there's also a factory on the kibbutz, the factory works.
Yeah, it's not agriculture.
Planting.
It's agriculture, farming. Okay, now if you look on 698, 699, in verse 17, or even earlier on the same page, starting with 14, here it talks about if you want to make a sale to your fellow or make a purchase from the hand of your fellow, do not aggrieve one another. According to the number of years at the Jubilee year, you shall buy from your fellow, and so forth. Then at verse 17 it says, each of you shall not aggrieve his fellow, and you shall fear your God, for I am Hashem. So here it says, what does it mean to aggrieve your fellow? So there's a number of understandings for what this is. One of them is to force someone to sell you something they don't want to sell. They make an offer you can't refuse, right? You know that expression with the mafia, where they'll come and they'll say, all right, I want you to sell me your business. Well, I don't want to sell my business. I like my business. I don't care. You don't sell me your business, I'll kill you. And then I'll get your business. So it's called an offer you can't refuse. You have no way out. So you're going to sell them your business. Right? So here it says you're not allowed to coerce someone in any way, even to sell you something. Let's say you walk into one of your friend's house and they have this necklace that you really love, and they never wear it. You know they've never worn it, and you really love it. And you say to them, "I'd like to buy that necklace from you. I know the necklace is only worth $5,000, but there's only one. I've never seen one anywhere else. I'll give you $10,000 for this necklace." The person says, "I really don't want to sell it." He says, "But you never wear it. Why don't you sell it? You can make $10,000. I don't want to sell it. It has meaning to me. It came from my mother. But that's all. It just has meaning to me. But you don't like it. Take the $10,000 and do something for your mother." "No, I want to do it." So they push and they push and they push until the person finally gives in. Right? We know such a thing, right? You push it. So that is what most people say this means. Do not do those types of things where you you push people to do what you want them to do, or to sell you something, or to buy something. Right, that's called being grieving your neighbor. But then it says here, each of you shall not grieve his fellow, and you shall fear your God, for I am Hashem your God. Right? Every mitzvah in the Torah that we have, don't kill, don't steal, any one of them. Why don't we do it? Right? Because you should fear your God, and I am the God who took you out of Egypt. Every single mitzvah. Right? You don't need to tell me in one mitzvah. All the mitzvahs, God gave us all the mitzvahs. If you better follow them, or else. Right? If you look at it in the negative. So here it says, right? You shouldn't do this. Right? You should not coerce your fellow, and you should be why? Because you should be afraid of God, and I'm God. So you say, why is this law different than any other law? Every law, God said, every law should be afraid of God. Why this one specifically? What's so special about this one that it says it here? And the commentaries say that it's because, when I'm going to do a deal with somebody, let's say I own a store and somebody comes in, I don't know this person from anyone, so this is going to be a retail deal. In other words, the price says $20, it's going to be $20. You don't come and say, well, I can't afford it, how about if I give you 18? So too bad. If you want it for 18, go down the street, someone will sell it to you for 18. My price is 20, right? That's one. But if another story happens, let's say a guy walks in and he says, I'd like to buy this from you. How much is it? It's $20. He says, well, I only have 18. And he says, well, I'm sorry, this is the price. And he say, wait a minute, don't I know you? Yeah, who are you? Well, you remember this person, this and this? Sure, I grew up with him. He saved my life when I was a kid. Well, that's my father. My father was your good friend. Right? So the guy says, you know what? Go ahead, you can have it for $15. You can have it for the price you want. Why do you do it? Because you know his father. You know the person's father, that's why, right? So that's what God's saying here. God's saying to us, I'm the father of the buyer and I'm the father of the seller. So don't go forcing people to buy things. Don't go forcing people to sell things. Do business honestly. Because if you want to do business honestly, if you would do it, be honest, if your nephew came into the store, then I'm telling you, this is your nephew. Because I'm your father, God says, and I'm his father. So you're cousins. So you better treat him right. Right? The point is, God's saying, I'm there with you on both sides. That's why it says, you should not aggrieve your fellow, and you shall fear your God, for I am Hashem. God is saying, I'm God. I'm his father, I'm your father. Now treat every other Jew, right, like he's your brother. Don't treat him like he's a stranger. Right? That's what it's saying. In fact, later on, we have this very wild law, a law that's very hard for people to understand. The law, and it's in this parsha that we're reading this week. It says that you're not allowed to charge interest to a Jew. If a Jew comes over to you and says, I need to borrow $100, can you lend me $100? You say, sure, I'll lend you $100, but it's going to cost you 15%. So at the end of the year, you pay me back $115. Now, what's wrong with that? What's unholy about that? What's wrong with doing such a thing? I don't think anything's wrong with it, right? Let's say I own a business and I rent cars, and you need a car. You come to me and say, I need to rent a car. So I say to you, you know what? This car costs me $25 a day to maintain. I have to pay for the insurance. I have to pay to keep it clean. I got to do the oil changes. I got 100 cars and they're here to make money, but it costs me $25 a day to have this car. So if you want to rent my car, I'm going to rent you for $40. So that's okay. Okay, the guy rents the car and he uses it. Now, why is that different? Why are you allowed to rent a car at a profit or rent a house at a profit, but you're not allowed to rent money at a profit? And that's basically what you're doing. I come to you, I want to go into business. I need $1,000 to go into business. I want to borrow it from you. You say, sure, but it'll cost you $1,100. You have to pay me $100 extra for the $1,000. Right? Why is that any different than my buying a car from someone or renting a car from someone? Right? But yet the Torah says you can't charge interest. It doesn't say you can't make money. You can't make a profit. It says you can't charge interest. So what's the difference in the two? All right. That next thing is that why is it only for Jews? Why can't you can't charge Jews interest? You can charge non-Jews interest. But if there's something wrong with charging interest on money, then you shouldn't be allowed to charge anybody. Why does it say that? So the answer is that the fact is that renting money, right, for a profit, which is lending money with interest, renting money with a profit, there's nothing wrong with it. It's not unethical. No, it's as ethical as renting a house for a profit, renting a car for a profit, renting anything for a profit. It's totally ethical. However, if your brother came to you and he said, I need $1,000 or I'm going to go hungry, or I'm going to need $1,000 or I'm going to lose my business, would you say to him, okay, I'll give you it, but you got to give me back 1,100? Not if you're a normal person. You're gonna give it to your brother with no interest. You wouldn't even think of charging your brother interest. It's your brother. So the Torah says when it comes to lending money, right? It says all Jews are brothers, and if you want to lend somebody money to help them out, so help them out. Don't put them in a worse situation, right? If I'm coming to you to borrow money, that means I'm in trouble. I don't have enough money to pay my bills. So what do? You make it so that I can pay my bills now, but now in a month I'm going to owe more money. I want to not only owe what I owe now, I owe it more because you're charging me interest on top of it. So the Torah says your brother you don't do that to. When your brother, your mother, your sister, somebody comes to you and says, I need a loan, you don't charge them interest. All Jews are brothers, so it's the same idea. Just like we said before, I'm your father, God says. No matter what side you're on, you're the seller, you're the buyer. I'm your father, and that is that the other side better treat you honestly. And it's the same thing here. When the Jews come in to borrow money, it's your brother coming to borrow money, and you don't charge interest to your brother. That's why we're allowed to charge a non-Jew. If there was something wrong with charging interest, then you wouldn't be able to charge a non-Jew. The fact that we can is because there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that you don't do it to your brother. And Jews are brothers. So that's what it's telling us. And it goes on more about the Jubilee year. So then let's take a look at the next parsha, because we have two, and 708. And it says, Behar-Behukosai tilechu, if you will walk in my rules, mitzvosai tishmeru, and you will guard my commandments, and you'll do them. V'nasati gashmechem b'itam, I will make it rain at the appropriate time. V'nasna aretz yavula v'eitz hasada yitem piro, and I will make things grow so that you'll be able to have things. For a farmer, what God is saying, if you will walk in my ways and you'll guard my mitzvahs, then I'll make you wealthy. Because a farmer, that's how he gets rich. How does a farmer get rich? When there's enough rain, the rain comes down and nourishes the crops, and the crops grow. That's how you get rich, right? So God's saying the same thing. If you're a doctor, if you'll walk in my ways and you'll keep my Torah, then I'll send you lots of patients. If you're a lawyer, I'll send you lots of clients. If you own a business, I'll sell you lots of customers. It's the same idea, right? So there's a big problem with this. God says, if you do, right, you follow the Torah, then you will make a living. You'll make a living. And if you don't, you won't. And it says that as well. So we know a rule. It says it in Ethics of Our Fathers, a concept we know from many places. There is no reward in this world. You are not rewarded for what you do. God does not give you a reward in this world for doing mitzvahs. It's like if you walk into a shul, right? A man goes to shul, he has to put his tefillin on. So you get up in the morning, you get up early, you make yourself go to shul, you put on your tefillin, you daven, you take off your tefillin, and as you're putting your tefillin in the bag, there's $1 million, right? Because you're rewarded for putting on tefillin. So what are you going to do the next day? You're going to do it again. You're going to put on tefillin again, another $1 million. Every day you get $1 million, right? But that's a problem with our thinking you're going to get a reward in this world. When a person puts on tefillin, they don't get $1 million. They get a reward in the future. It's a deferred payment. It's just like, you work. A person who's on a very low-level job will work, and they get paid back then. I work for 2 hours, I'll get paid for 2 hours. I work for a day, I get paid for a day. Then when people are in a salary, so you work for a month, then you get paid. Not a couple hours, right? It's called deferred payment, deferred reward. So we believe in this concept that God defers it. You do mitzvahs, you do good things, Hashem will reward you, but He'll do it only in the world to come, not in this world. But what did we just say here? We just said, if you walk in my way and you will guard my mitzvahs, then I will make it rain appropriately in the land. So He's saying, if you follow the Torah, you will be rewarded now. You're going to be rich. But then I just told you that you can't. That doesn't work. You don't get rewarded now. And the Torah here says you do. So one of us is wrong. Either the Torah is wrong or I'm wrong. Chances are it's me that's wrong. But how could that be? So the answer is as follows. When a person does a mitzvah, right? And they would get paid in this world. That's like putting on your tefillin and finding $1 million. Or you go into McDonald's and you buy a Big Mac, right? You eat it and your stomach falls off. That's right. That's a punishment for doing something wrong immediately. None of those things happen. Right? We know that those things don't happen, and on that basis, we have now an understanding that the reward only comes in the world to come after we die. And yet the Torah says right here that if you follow my ways, the rain will fall in the right time. It means you'll make a living. Right? You're going to do good. You'll be financially blessed if you follow and go in my ways. So how is that not a reward? I just showed you there is no reward, and now there is one. So the answer is it's not a reward. And this is how. Originally, God created a world. And in the world that God created, the world ran perfectly. There was enough rain everywhere. There was not too much rain, not too little rain anywhere. There was enough sun everywhere, not too little, not too much. Everything that a person needed in order to live, in order to make a living, in order to be successful, that's how God created the world. He made the world to be a good place. God did not make the world so that we should have floods. God didn't make the world so we should have droughts. God made the world so everything should run perfectly. But it doesn't run perfectly. There are lots of times when there are droughts, and there are famines, and there are floods. Right? There's too much water, too little water. All these things happen. Right? So how is that possible if God creates a perfect world? So the answer is it's our fault, human beings. Because you look at it this way, and I've used this example before, but it fits very well. Imagine the world is a machine. And in that machine, you have all these cogs, right? These sprockets. It's like a cog, right? And they're interwoven, and they're all turning. And when you put a piece of metal in, and all these things turn, out comes a widget, whatever a widget is, right? It comes out at the end. And normally, you can make 25 widgets in an hour by putting the metal in one end, and it goes through this machine with all these turning dials, like 1,000 turning dials, and out comes this widget, right? So now you imagine. I know this is impossible, but you imagine that this machine has 500 of these cogs, and they're all going clockwise, right? And the machine's running, and they're all going clockwise. So when you put in the metal, it clockwise goes through the machine and comes out a finished product. So that's what they are. Now imagine if out of those 500 cogs in the machine, one of those cogs suddenly became aware, and suddenly a mind developed inside of this cog. And it says, I'm sick and tired of going forwards, going clockwise all the time. I want to go counterclockwise. I don't want to go clockwise. I want to go the other way. So it does. So now you have one cog in this machine going the wrong way. Now, of course, this is fantasy, but it's going the wrong way. So there's so many cogs, 500 cogs, and if one goes the wrong way, it doesn't break the machine. But the machine doesn't work well, because some of the machine's not going to work correctly. So it'll work, but it won't work perfectly. So the fact that happens and the machine will not work perfectly, right, is the result of the fact that this one cog decided it's not going to go clockwise like everyone else. It's going to go counterclockwise because that's what it wants to do. But it won't stop the machine. They'll just hinder the machine. That's exactly what our life is. God created a world that was perfect, that people could be assured there were no famines, there were no floods. People were doing what they're supposed to be doing. The world was perfect. We were one with the world, to use that expression. Suddenly we decide, we're one of those cogs in the 500 cog machine, and we decide we're not going to do what God wants anymore. I'm too tired to go to shul. I'm too tired to say Shema. I don't feel like keeping kosher. So you start doing what you want to do. So you're like the cog in the machine that instead of all going clockwise, you're going counterclockwise. You're going the wrong way. And it throws off your part of the machine. So that now the world has floods, and it has droughts, and it has famines, because you didn't do the right thing. Right? You threw off the machine. You didn't break the machine. It's still working, but you threw it off. If you would just go and follow the Torah and be a part of the machine going the right way, then the world would be perfect. But it's not, because we're not all following the Torah and doing it. But that's what it's telling you here. It's not saying, if you will do my mitzvahs, I'm going to reward you by letting rain fall. No, he says, this is not a reward. If you do mitzvahs, then you are one with the world. And then everything in the world is running perfectly, which means that everything that's in the world is running clockwise because it chooses to, and then the machine works. And therefore there'll be enough rain, and not too much and not too little, and everywhere in the world. So that's what it's saying here. It's saying God created a beautiful world, because we're the only ones with free will, and we decide that we're not going to do what God wants us to do. We're that one cog in the machine going the wrong way, and because of it, the world it's not going to be perfect anymore. You're going to have floods and famines. So if that's the case, then where you have such a thing like this, what do we do in the end, right? When we understand that there is no reward. So the fact is, that's not a reward. What you're doing is you're making the world run the way it's supposed to work. It's a fact, right? It's just a fact. It's not a reward. It's like, imagine if a person takes poison, right? Is it a punishment that they die? No, they took poison. They're going to die. It's not punishment. It's a fact. You're going to die. If a person takes care of themselves, and let's say they were smoking and they quit smoking, and they added 5 years to their life, is that a reward for quit smoking? No, it's a fact. This is how the world works. God, if you were sick and you do something to get better, you'll get better most of the time. So therefore, that's what's happening here. Here, the world is perfect, and it's not running perfectly because we're not doing what we're supposed to. But if you follow in my ways and you guard my mitzvahs, then the world will run perfectly. Because I already set it up the way. That's not a reward. The reward is after we die, and that's the difference in them. Okay, we'll go on a bit. Now, beginning on the bottom of 7:11 and going 7 through 7:13 and on, we have what's called the tochacha, or the tochacha, some people say. And what is that? That is like curses. It's like curses. That is, if you follow my Torah, I'll make it rain appropriately. If you don't follow it, this is what's going to happen. And you go through all of these things that are going to happen to us, some terrible things. That it says the mothers will eat their children because they're so hungry. It says that about the amount of blood will go down the streets will be filled with blood like a river. Terrible things will happen, and we know they've happened. We know we're far enough in history. We've seen this. We've seen what happens to Jews in history. And God says this is going to happen if you don't follow my way. If you follow my way, this is great. If you don't, this is what will happen. And he tells us what will happen. And it's found 2 places in the Torah where it tells us these negative things that will happen if we don't follow the Torah. But then it says, right at the end, if you look on 7:16 and 7:17, it says, after all of that's done, and God's done that, God doesn't want to punish us, so he will cause himself to remember our forefathers. And because of the merit of our forefathers, right, then it says that he will cause all of the pain to stop. And this is what it says. Look at the top of the page there. Zecharti esprisi Yaakov. I'll remember my covenant with Yaakov. V'af esprisi Yitzchak. And I'll remember my covenant with Yitzchak. V'af esprisi Avram eskor v'aretz eskor. And even my covenant with Abraham I'll remember, and the land of Israel I will remember. So here he's saying, God says, I'm going to remember my forefathers. By remembering your forefathers, by remembering them, I'm going to give you merit. Because your forefathers did so many good things, and you're their children, then you're going to get merit. Now, one thing is that people always ask, how is that possible? But let's look at it in the physical world. This is spiritual, right? They did these great things, so we get rewarded for it. Let's say you had a great-great-great-grandfather who, opened an iron mill in Canada, and it became a giant iron mill. It became the largest. So back in, let's say, 1910, he's worth $500 million, right? 1910, that's like $10 billion today or something more, right? But he's worth that. Now, he dies, and it goes to your grandparents, and then they die, it goes to your parents, then they die, and it goes to you. Well, I want to go to court, and I'm going to say, I don't want you to get the money. I want the money. I want it. Why should you get the money? You didn't work for it. Your parents didn't work for it. Your grandparents didn't work for it. Your great-grandfather worked for it. So what? Your great-grandfather? Why should you get it? I want it. So the court will say, you're crazy. This is the relative. The relatives get it. Relatives inherit, right? If you make money, your children get the money. When we die, our children get our money. They get our belongings. They get our things. And we want them to. Right? We want them to. So it's the same thing spiritually. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob did amazing things to better the world. And because of it, they got a lot of merit, a lot of reward. They got so much reward that it's like having a bank account with all of this extra reward in it that they couldn't even benefit from it. So God says, I'm going to, in the merit of your forefathers, I'm going to do things for you. So today, we have the merit of our forefathers. Just like if we had forefathers who were millionaires, we'd have money from them. Because they were moral people, we have reward from God. He takes care of us because of it. So that's one of the ideas behind the merit of one's forefathers. But here, now that he just finishes this whole section of the curses, of what's going to happen to us. And then he says, no, but now it's going to stop. Because I will remember Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and all the great things that they did. Right? So, but if you look at the words, it doesn't really say that. It says, I will remember the covenant with Yaakov and the covenant with Yitzhak and the covenant with Abraham I will remember. So we know that the way the forefathers were, it wasn't Yaakov, Yitzhak, Avram. We all know how it was. Who was first? Avram was first, then Yitzhak, then Yaakov. He said, I remember Avram, I remember Yitzhak and Yaakov. That's how it's said. When you pray, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Yaakov. Right? Why? Because that's chronologically. Abraham was first, Yitzhak was second, then Yaakov was third, and then it ended the idea of our forefathers. But those were the three. Why in the Torah does it tell us out of order? Takes them and turns them around. Yaakov is first, then Yitzhak, then Avram. So to understand this, I think we have a very reasonable idea that the Torah is telling us an important point. And the point is that throughout history, there will be times when the Jewish people will be in trouble. Just like they are in the book, just right now in this where we are. They're in trouble. God is cursing them for whatever reason. And there are different things that can save us. You have Torah can save us. Right? If we learn the Torah, that can save us. We can have prayer can save us. And then there's one other thing, which is good deeds, doing good things for other people. That also can save us. So if we were, God forbid, under threat from God, that He's going to wipe out Jews because we're not being good people, so then we say no. Look, we have all of this merit, right? All of these things that we have, that we are able to accomplish with all of these things. So originally, when the Jews had it, it was Torah. The power of learning Torah, the involvement of Torah, was enough to save the Jews. Then as time went on, less and less people were really learning Torah in depth. We know how it was in history. Less and less people were doing it. But they were praying. Right? They still prayed. They still went to shul. They were still traditional. Like you look at our parents' generation or the generation before that. They might not have been the most religious people. They might not have learned Torah every day. But they still went to shul. They still prayed. They still had an attachment to God. Right? Then what happens then? Next. So if we don't have people with a lot of Torah, so then we say next time God wants that we need to be saved, we're going to be saved by the avoda, by the prayer. But what happens when people stop praying? And you look at a lot of secular Jews today, they stop praying. But what do they do? What do you find even with secular Jews? No matter who it is, they still do chesed, acts of kindness. They give charity. Look how much money is raised by the Jewish, like the Jewish Federation. Compare that money that they raise to how much money the United Way raises. Now, the United Way of Toronto raises money from everybody in Toronto. They don't care if you're white, black, Chinese, Jewish, Muslim. They don't care. Everybody who lives here, and it's a good thing. I mean, it's a good program. They support lots of good things. So giving the United Way is a good idea, right? And everybody can give. Giving to the UJA is also could be a very good idea. But who gives to the UJA? Not blacks and Irish and Scottish and Jamaicans. Jews give to the UJA. Do you ever look how much money the UJA collects in a year and how much United Way collects in a year? It's almost the same. How could that be? There are one group of Jews who give not only to the Jewish UJA but also give to the United Way. Right? To raise as much money among themselves as the entire city does. It's like sometimes they put in the newspaper the President of the United States income tax. Because it's public, right? If you want to know it, he releases it to the public. If the public wants to know how much money did the president make, what did he do with his money, right? So you look under charity, how much money does the president of the United States make? First thing, the president of the United States' salary, I think, is $250,000 a year, and he can't be a poor person to become president, right? Because he had to have the abilities. Probably he's a very successful business person or inherited a lot of money, and he spends a lot of money to become president. But he's also probably a very intelligent person. So now here you have this guy who's the president of the United States. He's making $250,000 just off his salary alone. Plus he has all these perks. He has a free place to live, right? Doesn't have to pay for it. His wife gets all the gowns that she wants for free, gowns like you could never afford on your own. They're certainly not poor, right? How much does the president of the United States give to charity? You look in there, it's like $500 a year, $150, $1,000. They're not giving like what I give, and I don't make what he makes. They make twice, 3 times what I make, and I'm giving more charity than them, right? In fact, the Revenue Canada used to say that accountants used to say the Revenue Canada used to audit Orthodox Jews or Jews in general much more than the average person. Say, why is that? Are they anti-Semitic? They said no. They said because we don't make sense. We show them we're making a salary of $100,000 a year, we're giving away 10. What kind of an idiot makes $100,000 a year, gives away $10,000 a year to charity, right? Plus pays tuition. Like, what kind of a life is that? $100,000 a year, you give away 10 to charity? The President of the United States makes 10 times that, and he gives away $500 to charity. What are you giving away $10,000 to charity for? So they don't believe it. They say somebody's lying. And of course we do it, because we're charitable people. And that's the last thing, right? If you don't have Torah, and you don't have prayer, one thing you can see, that Jews, everywhere you look, Jews are kind. They help each other. They give charity. They do things that help other Jews. It's just known. You don't have to be religious to be that way. You can be a mensch, you can be a good person, you can be a caring person, and they're not religious. I'm not advocating that's the way to be, because you're missing out on a lot of beauty and a lot of, purpose for life. But you see that Jews, right, are kind. Right? They're merciful. They feel the pain of others, and we want to help. And that makes no difference how religious they are at all. This quotation begins of, I remember Yaakov. Yaakov represents to us Torah. Yaakov was the epitome of the forefathers, who was gained from everything that his father and grandfather gave him, and he became the example of Torah. That means that his devotion to God was based on his Torah learning, which is what I said was the original Jews. Everybody used to go and learn, and then that stopped, and all they did was they stopped learning. And then they did to pray. Yitzchak, the second of the forefathers, is known for his prayer. In many places it talks about his prayer and how prayer, the divine service, working in the temple kind of thing, these types of things were something that was very much tied into who Yitzchak was. And just like the people who no longer learn Torah, but they still pray, they still are a member of a shul, they still go all the time to shul. But then you get to an age where people stop going to shul too. So all they have left is the acts of kindness that they do, and they do it well. Jews, no matter how religious you are, do kind things. If I just send out a notice that I need money for Jews who are hungry, I'll get money like this. The same people who say I don't have any money will give me money, because this is important. Jews help each other. Jews do that. That's the character trait of Abraham. Abraham was known for kindness. That's what he was known for. So the Torah turns the order around. It says, I'll remember Yaakov, because in the early days I need to know Yaakov, because everybody learned Torah. I remember Yitzchak, because later on in history, Jews stayed attached to prayer. They stayed attached to the community. But then after that, Jews started to slide away. But they're still kind. They still give charity. They're like Abraham. So that Abraham was the one that it ends with. Right? And that's why the Talmud says that the chasima, the ending, will be with Abraham. Now literally that means that the prayer that we say, the Shmon Esrei, it says, Baruch atah Hashem Magen Avram. It says that God is the guard of Abraham. But that's after saying God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, blessed is the God of Abraham. You say, well, why like all three of them, they give blessed is the God of Abraham, that's the last one. So we understand this a little different. When it says that the last one, that means the last in history, after all of the thousands of years of history, and many Jews have left Torah, many Jews have left prayer, but Jews never left kindness. So that's what's going to save us in the end. And that's why the pasuk is said in reverse. Yaakov, Yitzhak, then Avram, instead of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. It's in reverse. And that's why it does it there.
Are all three of them Torah kindness and...
No, each one.
Yes, I realize that. But on Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah and all that, Pesach, there's three things and we have to say it says. Is it the same thing?
No, there's on Yom Kippur the three things that we can do that help us repent. And that's the same thing.
Yeah, but...
Right? That's tied in. So now, if we look on 7:19, now we've just gone through this whole section of these curses, right? And then it tells us, Hashem speaks to Moshe saying, speak to the children of Israel, say to them, if a man articulates a vow to Hashem regarding evaluation of living beings. What is this talking about? This is a thing called erochin, which means where a person says, I'm going to give my worth to charity. What am I don't mean my fiscal worth. What am I worth? My body. What is it worth? How much money is it worth? And that's the amount I'm going to give to charity. So a person goes and makes a vow. I'm going to give my worth to charity. So the Talmud says, how do you find out what a person's worth? So they have a whole thing on it, right? And it's not a terrible amount of money. It's talking about the lowest common denominator, your body. How much is your body worth? So he says here that the idea is, why would it have this section of, that a person will offer themselves as a like in lieu of a sacrifice, their worth. They're saying, I'm worth $100, whatever it is that it turns out to be. I'm giving $100 to the temple. Right? They make a statement. Why do they do that after the curses? Like, why does the Torah put it in here? They can put it anywhere in the Torah. Why here? So the answer is that a person, in order to know a person, know their worth, to understand what they're worth, they have to go through pain. They have to go through experiences, suffering. And a person who goes through suffering knows what they're worth. They know what life is worth. They know what meaning of life is. They know what that is. And these people went through the curses. We just finished the curses. So then a person makes a statement like this. They tell a story about the Satmar Rebbe, which I think will illustrate this. The Satmar Rebbe actually was not a Rebbe before the war. He was the judge of a city in Hungary. But after the war, because of what happened, some people were killed, he became the Rebbe. And he was an extraordinary Rebbe. He was a man of unique abilities and an extraordinary person. You can agree with his opinions, not agree with it, but you have to give it to him that he was an extraordinary person. They tell that he once went to Israel, and customarily his followers did not go to Israel, and he was leaving Israel to go back to America, and they said to him, you're leaving Israel, who are we going to be able to go to now? Who can we go to for a blessing? Who can help us? If we need a blessing, we're having trouble in our lives, we need a blessing from a great person, who can we go to? So the Rebbe said to them, go to any Jew with a number on his arm. Any Jew with a number on his arm can give you a blessing because of what they went through. Right? A Jew who went through the Holocaust, who felt what it's like to suffer, to pain of what a Jew has, that Jew has the ability to be able to give you a blessing. And it's not just because I'm some special person. Anyone who did that. And that's what this is telling us here. You have all of these curses. Someone who lives through these curses, through a Holocaust, through an Inquisition, that person knows what life is worth. They know what they're doing. That person can give you a blessing. And that's why they put this section where a person makes a commitment to God from my worth. And I said, I want to give my worth. I want to give myself to the Torah, to the temple. I want to give myself to benefit. Right? You're not really giving yourself. I mean, you're giving an amount of money that is your worth. But it can only be done by a person who truly understands what life is. And that kind of person who's gone through such troubles, like the person who went through the Holocaust, they know. That's what his point was. And that's what the message is here as well. Okay.
So you told us a story of a personal life a couple of weeks ago. And the story was, were you corrected going back to Israel, to America yourself? Should you carry on studying?
Yeah.
Was that the Satmar Rabbi that
No.
you went to? No. I couldn't remember.
No, it wasn't. I never had the privilege of meeting him or seeing him in person. Okay, now these two parshas now conclude the book of Vayikra. On page 722 and 723, you'll see that it ends with the words chazak, chazak, and ischazek. When you finish a book of the Torah, we have a blessing. The strength, that you shall be strong. Right? That is to say that when a person concludes a book of the Torah, they've accomplished something. They've taken a step in life. And with it should become strength. You should have strength, and you shall be strong. In the world that we live in is a backwards world, the Talmud says. That the people in this world, in our world, who are honored, in the world to come are not honored. And the people in this world who are not honored are honored in the world to come. Everything's backwards. Here we honor people who are rich. There they honor people who give money away. Here we don't honor people who seem to be simple and religious and don't give are not sophisticated and so forth. In the world to come, they do the opposite. When a person learns Torah, they understand that, and it's difficult. It's difficult to not be the person who's on top. And so the Torah tells us: you learn Torah, you understand Torah, you have to be strong, and you have to remain strong. You have to realize that in the ultimate decision, what is the real judgment? What is that like? When a teacher says to you, and when you're in grade school, well, you got a C on this report, but you get an A for effort. That's sort of a left-handed compliment, because you get a C because the work was mediocre, but you get an A for effort because you're also mediocre, but you worked hard on it. Right? In other words, that's what they're saying. It's not a very nice thing to say, right? I mean, they don't mean it that way, but that's what they're saying. You worked really hard at this, and you only get a C. That means that you worked really hard, and that's the best you're able to do. And they're saying that's a compliment, right? We see in the world that we work very hard to be good people, and we don't seem to get the recognized for it, right? To be kind, to help people, to do things. You don't get recognized for it. You get recognized for being rich, for being beautiful, right? Being a celebrity, but not for being a good person. In fact, we always say that one of the things with Judaism that you see different than celebrities is that with a celebrity, when you look at them in a magazine or from a distance, they're these very beautiful, always happy, have wonderful eyes, right? You look at the movie stars, they seem so perfect, right? And we know they're not. We know that they can't hold their marriages and they get involved with drugs and liquor because they're not happy. They're very sad, right? But it looks like they're very happy. On the other hand, if you go into some of these really poor areas in Israel or run-down older areas in Israel, like Mea Shearim, right? And you see these Jews, they're walking in dark clothes and slowly, and they're old and big beards and they're gray, and you say they don't look like much. They don't look very special at all. They look actually like somebody you might not want to associate with. But the closer you get to that person, the greater you see they are, how special they are, how kind they are, how they go out of the way for others, how they have so little money yet they give others money. Right? They're special people. When you look at a celebrity, when you get up close, you see how ugly they are, how unhappy they are, how their lives are filled with drugs because they're so unhappy. And you realize that in this world, we give respect to those people who look pretty and who look rich and who act like they're special something. But the people who really should get the respect, we don't do it. In the world to come, it's the reverse. And that's what it's saying here. You want to learn that you're learning the Torah. You're learning that kindness is important. You're learning that Torah is important. That being a good person is important. Be strong. You'll make it. In the world to come, where the real judgment is, right? Not the A for effort. The real judgment. There, you're going to come out on top. That's what that tells us. And as that concludes, I guess we have to conclude ourselves this week.